Hello, everybody. This is Jasmina again, and this will be again a long video. And this has to do with period compliance, not just to period 9, but compliance during any period. Now, not all houses need to be updated, that is, brought up to the current period, that is, changing the period of your house, to be good houses in period 9 or in any subsequent periods. If you're lucky enough to have a house or an apartment or a condo, it's not so important for those, but we're mostly talking about houses that have an activated special formation in their flying star chart. They will remain good for all periods. You do have to be careful not to accidentally change the period of the house, but if you have this, you can stop watching the video. You're done. You're good for all times. And this is one reason why people who really know feng shui, they do look for this in their forever home so that they don't have to worry about it. Life will be a lot easier. Now, for houses that do have a weakened energy in any new period, changing that period house might be worth it. But there are other ways to comply that are a lot easier. Now, for apartments and condos, the period is fixed by the date of the first occupants to occupy and live in one of the apartments in the entire building, not your unit, but the entire building. So in general, apartments and condos don't change period. If they get to be so bad where they need a lot of work, a lot of time they're just torn down and a new apartment is put up. Now, a full period change for a house requires 3 things to change. It has to have its heaven energy change, its earth energy, and its human energy change. But you can still just do one of these and you will feel the change. But these are the things that if you have an activated special formation, you have to be careful about. Now, to change the heaven energy, you need to have a complete roof removal and replacement. Now, this doesn't mean just like a new set of shingles put on the house. We remove the old ones and put new ones on. This means also removing the decking, that is the flat, usually wood boards that comprise the real structure of your roof. Now, you'll still have the rafters or the trusses, which are the actual physical stuff that holds up those boards. Those can stay, but here you're opening up your house to the sky, and that's why it changes the heaven energy. So if you need a re-roof and you have an activated special formation, you make sure that they don't take all of your boards off the roof at the same time. You make them do half the roof and at least get the decking material put on half the roof before they take the other half of the roof off. You do that, then you won't change the period of the house. So this is important in 2 ways. If you put on an addition or you somehow change the footprint of the living area, and this could include converting a garage into living area where you heat and cool it and you bring it up to the standard of living, that will change the earth energy. And it's more important with an addition than with conversion of a garage, but it still works. And the last one is the easiest, and that is to be out of the house 100 consecutive days with no one living there or being in there for more than a few minutes. So that is if you're having your house worked on by construction workers, those days don't count in the 100 days. But if you're out of the house for whatever reason and somebody visits the house maybe once every week or once every 2 weeks just to check that the house hasn't been broken into and there's no leaks or anything like this, that few minute period of just looking around, that's fine. But you don't want anybody there for longer than 5-10 minutes. And then you change the human energy. Now, we did this in our current house, the current house that I'm actually living in, doing this recording from. And we felt the difference when we came back. And so this was enough to actually change the period of our house, at least in terms of how we interacted with the house and with the rest of the world. Now, some houses will fare better in period 9 than others. I think that's not a mystery. But the rules that I'm going to talk about here in terms of compliance, they can be applied to a house for any period. And it's true of apartments and condos too. But again, they only get a portion of the Flying Star chart, so it's not so important for them. It's really most important for houses. You do need to know your Flying Star chart, and this means you need to know your true facing direction, so you know you've got the right Flying Star chart. So this takes a little bit of work. I'm also going to give you some simple methods that will allow your house to be better complying with the current period, whatever it may be, if you do not already have a compliant house. Many houses are already compliant. Now, these rules that I'm going to give you can actually be applied to changes in any period. So 20 years from now, when we're approaching period 1, you can use these same rules with the number 1 replacing the number 9, and you'll still be able to use these rules. And you can do it in the rest of the periods too. Now, there are 3 basic ways. If you have good flying stars, the best, of course, is an activated special formation. And again, if you have one, you don't need to watch anything else here. But you may also have good flying stars that is not an activated special formation. You can still use that. Now, there is another way, and this is to have an external door. It does not have to be your main door. It could be any external door that faces what is called a connecting direction. And this connects the door facing to a specific set of directions that have to do with the 64 hexagram ring. There's a period number and there's an upper trigram number in this chart. And this will allow you to be able to connect, have your house connect to the period. And for period 9, we are looking at the period 9 number and also the Li Gua, because the Li is the Gua that's associated with the number 9. So this will become a little clearer as I go on. Now, you can also have an exterior door that's frequently used in a sector with a facing star 9. And this is, of course, I'm talking about period 9. Now, in period 1, you want to have it with a facing star 1, where you have a door. So it's pretty simple. And in period 2, you're looking for one with a 2. So it just goes on and on. Now, all period 9 houses, and by this I mean those built between 2024 and 2043, have the Flying Star chart that can be made into a 7-star robbery formation, but there are a lot of requirements. And this is one of the pickier special formations, but all houses have this possibility. Now, there may be period 9 houses that were built, or at least houses that were built between 161 and 181 years ago, because I'm recording this in 2023. They would be period 9 houses, but you have to make sure they haven't had their period changed, which probably has happened because they've had their roof replaced, or there was an addition put on, or somebody was out of the house for 100 days. It's very easy to change the period of a house. So most houses that were built during the last period 9 are no longer period 9 houses. Now, the thing is, for this period 9 and all period 9s, half of the 16 house Flying Star charts need to have the main door in what is considered the back of the house, and it's back with respect to the facing direction. Now, the main door is the one where when visitors come, they ring the doorbell, that's the main door. Or if a package is being delivered, it's delivered to that door. That's the main door. Now, this is the classic example of this kind of setup. You have a lake, or you have a big open space that is very visually appealing. You could be on a small hill where you can overlook a valley, and looks nice. Now, you don't want to be on the highest hill, but a smaller hill is okay. And then on the other side of the house, you have a road. Now, there's no other houses between this house and this lake or this view. That is what gives you this. Now, you can have houses here if it's far enough away, like it's in the valley. You could have houses, you could have a city there, in fact, and that would be okay. But it's far enough away that you don't really see individual houses unless you really look. Now, here, you have the road, you have your driveway. If something is delivered, somebody comes to visit, they're going to knock on a door on this side of the house. When you have this, your facing direction is almost always towards the lake because it's a better view. And this door over here is going to be in the back of your house, according to the facing direction. So just want to be clear about what that's like. Now, most people live in a situation that's a lot more like this, where you've got one house back into the other house. The facing direction is always towards the road. All these houses will have this same facing direction. There'll be another road up here. These houses will have a facing direction opposite this, but that's for these houses. Now, even if you had a lake here, and you had another road here and a lake here, these houses wouldn't have this setup. They would have this setup. And this house would have this setup because it can't really see the lake. I mean, it may see little bits and pieces, but it really doesn't have the view. Even if you had this setup where these houses were kind of staggered, you still don't see enough of the view. These houses are still too close. They block too much energy. So even if there's a lake here, you still have this as your facing direction. Now, when I'm talking about having unusual or this arrangement, if you have a house that faces a lake, and this is the facing direction of the house, which is kind of looks like the back, but it's at least towards the lake, that's a facing direction. If it is north, northeast, northwest, or east with the subdirection 1, so like north 1, northeast 1, east 1, that kind of thing, you have to have this arrangement to be able to take advantage of the 7-star robbery formation. Likewise, if it's south, southeast, southwest, or west with 2 or 3 as the subdirection, so south 2 or south 3 and so forth, you also have to have this setup. For this general setup where the house is facing the road, which is a lot more common, if you're north, northeast, northwest, or east with a subdirection 2 or 3, you are good. You at least have the possibility of easily creating or at least somewhat easily creating a 7-star robbery formation. Of course, your house has to be a period 9 house. So if you are currently living there, that means you may have to change the period of your house. And likewise, you have south, southeast, southwest, and west with subdirections 1 also have this general setup. And again, this is the more common type of house you will find in most places here. Now, the houses that face either northeast or southwest have what they call the diagonal form of the 7-star robbery. This is not accepted by all masters of feng shui, and I will warn you right now. But there's no reason, understanding the way a 7-star robbery formation works, I do not see a reason why this cannot work. However, you have to have an exterior connection to the outside from the center of the house. So basically, you're talking about houses that are possibly U-shaped or L-shaped. They could have one of these formations. It gets a bit tricky, but it can happen. And you can also use this trick of connecting the outside to the center of the house if you have a trapped star, and in this case we'd be talking about star 9. But whatever period it is, if you have a trapped star of that period, a U-shaped or an L-shaped house may well be able to take care of it. Now also there are a few houses scattered in here that actually also have a combo 10 in addition to having a 7-star robbery formation. Now I don't think that makes the house any better, but it certainly doesn't hurt it. So there are still a lot of possibilities, and like I said, all houses in period 9 at least have the potential to be fantastic houses. Now, 7-star robbery houses are quite picky. You have to have 3 doors in very specific locations, and you have to have a path from each of those 3 doors to the center of your house that's unobtruded by any kind of door. So this takes very specific exterior and interior requirements. So this is one of the pickiest of the special formations. And many houses would have a very hard time being compliant with this. So I don't want you to worry too much about this. Now, these few slides are really just have to do with period 9. Period 1, I don't remember quite well enough. It actually is somewhat similar to period 9. It also has a lot of chances to be a 7-star robbery. But it's going to have the same thing where half the houses are going to have to be in this kind of setup and the other half in this. So it's a little tricky. This is why you might not want to change the period of your house, because you may have to do a lot of work to meet this. Now, the one I'm going to give you here talks about existing houses, which, since this is 2023, when I'm giving you this, or when I'm recording this video, it's existing houses. You need to identify where your facing star 9 is located. Once we reach close to period 1, you want to identify where your facing star 1 is. So this is why it's useful for everything. The period of your house is completely irrelevant. You just care to find out where your facing star 9 is. If your facing star 9 is either in the facing sector or the adjacent sector, so that's basically in front of your house, you have automatic compliance. You're good. So here's an example. If you have a south-facing house, it could be south 1, 2, or 3, and you have a facing star 9 in south, southeast, or southwest, you would comply. You would qualify. Your house has automatic compliance, and you don't need to listen to the rest of this video. You're good. Now, there's other possibilities where the star 9 could be. It could be on the back or the side of the house. Then it's more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's considerably more difficult than this automatic compliance. The most troublesome one is a house with a trap star 9. That is, either the sitting or the facing star is in the center sector of the house. They have the most difficult time, and in general they're considered not compliant, but under special circumstances they can comply. Now, houses that have conditions 2 or 3, they can comply by using that connecting direction that I talked a little bit about. Now, you can use this method for other periods. You just replace 9 with whatever the period, this new period that's coming up, will be. So you can pre-decide whether or not your house will be compliant to, let's say, the next period, which is 1, or the period after that, which is 2, and so forth. So you can do this for any period. These methods work. Now here is the connecting directions. And I'm going to explain where you can find this information, but for right now, let's just concentrate on this. This is for something called a period number, and it's 9 because we're talking about period 9. And these are subdirections of each one of these. So north 3 is 15 degrees wide, but this subsector is only a little over 5.5 degrees wide. So this is about a third of north 3, and each one of these is about a third of 15 degrees. And I have color-coded them with the East group people, and if you have a quad number of any one of these, you're an East group. If you have one of these, you're a West group. And you don't have to comply with the East and West, but it's, let's say you have a little bit better energy. However, there's this set of numbers here, and it might be a little hard to read. This says out of Gua. Here and here it says out of Gua. Let's say you are a quad number 2, and your door is already facing north 3, but it actually happens to be facing this north 3. You're not going to feel that. Even though there's a connection here between period 9 and your door, you don't feel it because you're out of Gua. Now, out of Gua, I've talked a little bit about in the past. It can be used positively or negatively. Here it would be negative. That is, you wouldn't feel that connection to period 9. Somebody in the house that had a quad number 4 would feel the connection, and they would have better energy and better luck in this house. So this is why this number is important. And I will give you a table that will help you with this for any period. Now, these directions apply to houses of all periods. Again, the period is irrelevant. And an East group person can use one of the West group directions and vice versa. It's not quite as good of an energy, but so long as you have your house facing a good direction for you and you're sleeping in a good direction, then this door subdirection won't be a big deal. Now, if you're renting a place, you probably can't tilt your door. If you don't already be lucky enough to have one of these, you can't tilt the door. Your landlord will sue you. So the other alternative is you can tilt your work or study desk to one of these directions. And I'm going to show you how to do that near the end of this video. But this tilting of this desk only gives you good energy when you're actually working there or studying there. A door will give it to you 24/7. It's not as strong every single minute compared to this, but you can't work every single minute. So either way works. In general, this is easier with the door than the desk. But as long as you're working from home, definitely do this. Now, the other way to do it is you're connecting to the Li Gua, because Li is associated with star 9. And this, again, is an exterior door facing direction. It doesn't have to be your main direction, your main door, just like the last slide doesn't have to be your main door either. But this is another set of different directions. And again, I've subdivided them the same way, and you have some out of Gua. Now, you can see here that, at least for this one, 7 only has this one, and it's not really in one of its good directions, but they can still use it. But in the previous one, with the period number 9, it actually has at least 2 more that it can use. So just because it can't use one of these doesn't mean that it's a problem. It can use the other directions too. Again, you can tilt your desk to face one of these directions too. So it's the same deal. Now, these methods can be used to create a period compliance for any period. you just, instead of using 9, you're going to use the current period's numbers, and you would do that only if you only worry about it if the current period star is not in the front of your house, or if you don't have an activated special formation. If you have one of these two things, you don't have to worry about all of this stuff, tilting your desk, all this kind of stuff. You're good. Now, there is a table at this website. I'm pretty sure you cannot click on this in a video, but if you search for Wikibooks hexagram feng shui, you should be able to find this page. And its title is Binary Representations of the 64 Hexagrams. And this contains all the information you need for finding these angles. So it has the hexagram, which isn't terribly important. It has a name associated with it, but you can ignore it. But the key thing is it has its angular extent. Where does it start? Where does it stop? And there are two other columns that are very important. The column with the label of M is the column that will have the period numbers, at least what is usually called the period numbers. And the relevant number that you're looking for in the chart is the current period's number. So, or it'll be the next one coming up if you're worrying about this before the period actually arrives. So like 20 years from now, you look for 1 in the column, the M column. The other one is a period or a number that is associated with the upper trigram. Now this one is a little tricky, but I'm going to show you a table that will give you everything you need to be able to do this for any period. And with this information, you can actually draw a 64 hexagram chart, the ring, if you're actually interested. If you're not, don't worry about it. So again, the column labeled M on that web page is important. That's the period number. And the column labeled N is associated with the upper trigram. So you can see that period 1, we have the period numbers 1. Period 2, it's 2. So that makes total sense. Question is, where do these numbers come from? Well, it has to do with the early and later heavens Bagua. What we have here is the labels of the Gua for the different locations. The upper one on each one of these is for the early heavens, and the one below the number is for the later heaven. And this is key. So if we're looking at period 9, we know it's Li Gua. Li, and the reason it is because the later heavens, 9 is associated with Li. Now we look, where is Li Gua, the word, which is the same as this. I mean, it's what we call this. Where is it in the early heavens? It's with number 3. So that's where 3 comes from. So let's check period 1. Period 1 is Kan. So here is Kan. Again, it's the later heavens, so it's below. Where is Kan located in the early heavens? It's here with the 7. That's where 7 comes from. You can do this for every one of these. It's quite simple. And we've done this early heavens, later heaven link before. Now, you notice we don't have a period 5, and that's because this system uses the 2-cycle, 8-period Xuankong calendar. It doesn't use the 3-cycle, 9-period Flying Star calendar. It uses the Xuankong calendar instead. Now, trap stars are a little tricky. And remember, trap stars are a problem. There is what I'm calling a standard way of unlocking a trap star, which I've never used, and honestly, I'm very skeptical about. And that's because I have not heard or have not read or heard in words a recognized master of feng shui say this is the way to do it, because there are other ways to take care of this problem. And I'm very, very skeptical that this works because it doesn't correspond to the way you would treat any other star. And so why would it work here? I really don't know. Now the idea is you would place water where you have a star 5 that matches the location of your trapped star. So if you have a facing star that's trapped, you're looking for the star 5 on the outside that is also in the facing location. And if it's a sitting star that's trapped, you look for the sitting star 5. So let me give you an example. This is a real chart. This is Northwest 1, period 8 house. Now it has a trapped star 9 here in the facing star in the center. Now it's fine while we're still really in period 1. It's weakening now, but it's not disastrous. But once we reach period 9 on February 4th of 2024, this becomes more serious. Now, however, if we look at this, this is actually a pearl string house. And if it can be activated, this house is already compliant. Now, this is one house, and there may be others too, but this is one particular house. I would not add water here in the north. In general, in period 9, it's good to have water in the north. It helps with wealth. But on the off chance that this thing works, this method works, then you destroy your pearl string. And that's something you don't want to do. That would be a very dumb idea. Now, if you really are having trouble and you think it's because of the lock star, we can unlock it in other ways, and we could unlock it with the Castle Gate. So we could unlock this instead with the Castle Gate, and that has a lot more proof and backing from the experts. The Castle Gate works. This I'm very leery about because the idea here is that if you place water where the 5 is, the 5 somehow goes to the center, and then you have to refly the stars. But that doesn't work for any other star. And what if you put water there and you don't have a trapped star? Why does it only work for a trapped star? It doesn't make sense. Usually when you add water in any one of these sectors outside here, exterior water we're talking about, you activate the facing star. And I think that's all you do. If you add water here, that does not activate the Castle Gate. Now, you don't really want to activate the star 5 now. It's not the greatest star to activate now. In general, it's misfortune. So that is a little problematic. And this is why I'd be really careful about having water here in the north. But we could use water in the north and activate the Castle Gate. And that means you have to have water in a very specific location within all of the north. And the way a Castle Gate works is that the base star where the water is located does replace the facing star 9, and then it's flown according to this. We have a subsector of 1, and the 4 is even, so it's flown in a negative direction. Now it does flow in the Lo-Shu path, but because we have northwest up here and this is south, the Lo-Shu path, usually you have south on top. It's very confusing, but I've checked that I've got the right charts. So you just have to trust this. This is what you end up with if you activate the Castle Gate. Now, this brings 9 out to here, and in this case, I would put water in the south, even though this is where you should see a mountain. But if you do see a mountain, that's fantastic. Water doesn't terribly hurt it, but you can use this. Now, you notice this is no longer a pearl string formation. So in general, I'd be very, very careful about water here for this particular house. Now, if you cannot activate the pearl string for whatever reason, then this is probably a good idea. It all depends on details. Now, here's another example of a facing star 9 that's locked. And this is northwest 2 and 3. It's the same chart for either one. Now, this does not have a special formation, but the 5 is here, and this is not a location where you can do a castle gate, because castle gate can only be in the adjacent sectors. So you could have water in the west or in the north. And which one you want to do, because in this case I would want to get rid of this locked star here, would depend on where your main door is located. If your main door was located here in the northwest, I would put water in the west that activates the castle gate. That is, it has to be in a certain narrow range. And I would also put water in the north, but not in a castle gate location, and it would also be smaller than the one here in the west. When that would happen, you actually end up with a good sector here. But if your door is located here or here, you would just put water in the north. So this is basically what happens. This is the example for the north. Again, 4 goes here, but now it goes in the positive direction because we're in 2 and 3. So it would move forward, and it would end up with the star 9 here in the north, where the water would already be placed. And so it activates the star 9 automatically. This would be if you have the door here or here. And the reason why I'm leery about putting it if your door is here is because now you have 5 where your main door is. That's not so great. Instead, if we activate the castle gate with the water in the west, it puts 9 with your main door. That's why I would do it. And I would still have water here because this is good for wealth, but I would be careful not to have it where it activates the castle gate. Now, you can only have one castle gate. You can't have both. But why have it compete? Make sure this is not in a place where you might activate the castle gate. Now, there's other ways. If you have a house that looks basically like this. Now, remember, one of the criteria to be compliant is that you have an exterior door that's in the sector where you have the star 9. So if you have the facing star 9 here in the center, this is far enough in that this door opens into the center sector. And so this is also compliant. Now, you do have a missing sector here. And if this chart is a proper chart for a combo 10 house, then my recommendation, if you have the money, is to close off this wall up here, move the door here, remove this wall. These walls can stay depending on what the rest of the house is arranged, but then you have a combo 10 house, and a combo 10 house just needs to be a square or rectangular house to be able to be activated. Now, it does help if it has good external landforms, but it's still activated. And then you are compliant for all periods. So there's ways around all this. This is another example, and I've actually seen quite a few houses that look a lot more like this. You have a garage, and you still have a bump out. Now, this bump out has to be big enough. Now, you don't make this wall does not define your house. It's this wall, because this is the interior living space. Again, that's how you square off the house. Now, this is still a missing sector, and this is a pretty useless sector because this is the garage, and you wouldn't be using it for living space. If you use the whole garage, then you change the whole thing, and then the star will be trapped again, because once you stretch this out, this might not be in the center anymore. It might be, though. It actually probably would be. It would probably still be okay. But you'd have to see the details. Now, this house would have a trap star unless it is a combo 10 house. Now, again, you can still, even in a house that is trapped, truly trapped, you can still face your table or desk to face one of those connecting directions I talked about. And of course, this is most important if you live in an apartment or a condo or you rent where you cannot add external water. Now, if you do happen to own the house, you might consider tilting your door to one of those directions because that is a bit more powerful because it works 24/7 than doing your desk, but you can still do the desk. You can do both. That only gives you a little more of a boost. But at least do this if your house otherwise does not comply. But remember, there's a lot of other ways to comply. So this is only for the people who have real problems complying with the whatever period we're coming to. Now, in this part, I'm going to talk about how you would actually tilt your desk properly. Now, this assumes you've gone through the process of looking at the satellite, finding the direction, and then doing the UTM to true north correction. So you know exactly what your true facing direction is of your house. And let's say in this case, it's 10.7 degrees, which puts it in north 3. Now, what you want to do is you want to align your desk so that the front of the desk is parallel to the front of the wall. You don't want to necessarily have it shoved up against the wall because you've got to rotate the desk later. But as long as it's parallel, you're good. You put a compass on here and you see what the compass says. You don't really care what the compass says, but you need to know that number. Now the desk's true facing direction, since it's in the same direction as the, parallel to the front of your house, that's still going to be 10.7. But your compass very likely will not read that. Now, even though this is part of North 3, and there is a sector in North 3 that does comply with one of the connecting directions, this number is not in this range. So this door here doesn't comply. And the desk sitting here also does not comply. But there's a simple 3-step to make it comply. First you need to do is find the difference between roughly the center of these two directions, this range here that is, and your true facing direction. So in this case, the center is 19.6 something. 19.5 is fine. We're just trying to get you somewhere in the middle of the range. And then you subtract your true facing direction. Now, if this were 25, this would be a negative number. But now it's a positive number. And that's important whether it's negative or positive. The second step is to add if this number is positive or subtract if this number here would be negative from your compass reading, whatever your compass says. Now this can be a real compass or it can be the compass on your smartphone. And in this case, it would read 13. We're looking for something that reads 13.8. Then you simply rotate the desk until your compass says 13.8. Now its real direction, its true direction will be about 19.5, even though it says 13, because your compass doesn't read your true facing direction. And there you have it. You're done. Now your desk is facing the proper direction to tap into period 9 energy. And that will be enough. As long as you do some work here, that will be enough to make your house compliant. So that is that part. Now I'm going to talk about Aruguá. I did talk a little bit about it earlier, and I actually have a separate video about Aruguá. Now you can find an actual 64 hexagram ring with the Aruguá numbers on page 76 of Xuan Kong Dahagua, Not Exactly for Dummies, by Hong Hin Chong. This is not a cheap book, so I'm going to give you these numbers. Now he has it in a nice circular path. It's actually a real chart that you could use. Here, I'm just giving you the numbers in a table. Now, each one of these things is 5.625 degrees wide. And these are the Ardois numbers. Now, I said before, Ardois can be used for good or bad. Let's say your house is 3 degrees. When you've looked at it, your true facing direction is 3 degrees, but your Croix number 4. Well, if you have somebody who is a Croix number, let's say 7, they will actually feel good energy in this house. You won't really feel much. However, let's say your house is at 7 degrees instead. You're still Croix number 4, and you have some sort of Sha Qi out here that, as measured from the center of your house, is somewhere between these two numbers. You will not feel the negativity from that Sha Qi because you are out of Gua. But 7 will. But it will also feel some good energy coming in from that. Oh, actually, it won't feel the good energy coming in from the house. So this person who is a Croix number 7 would be very unfortunate. So, but here they would, a Sha Qi here would not hurt, number 4, 8, or 9. So this is when it's good. So sometimes out of Gua is good, sometimes it's bad. So you have to understand what you're looking at. If it's acquiring good energy, you do not want to be out of Gua. If it's blocking or if it's Sha Qi that's there, you do want to be out of Gua. So this is the chart basically for roughly a little bit over the first third of all the directions, of the 64 directions. This is the chart for the second part. Now I'm going to actually divide this into sub-directions later, like the north, south, east, west, and all that. So that may be more helpful. But here's the last part. And again, I'm pausing a bit so you can take a screenshot if you really like. But this might be a little more helpful. So this is the first half of north. I've highlighted those directions. This is all of northeast. This is all of east. And this is half of southeast. This is the other half of southeast. I think you know what comes next. This is all of south. This is all of southwest. Half of west. Half of the other half of west. All of northwest. And then the remainder is that little piece of north that we began with. We had the other half at the start. Now, you can use this information with a bit of work to make your house compliant for any period. And this is one of the reasons I'm doing this, is because you shouldn't have to go every 20 years and get a whole nother evaluation to make sure your house is compliant. This isn't terribly hard. It's not terribly easy either, but you can do this. And of course, one of my big things is I think there's too much secrecy in Feng Shui. And that's because people want to earn a lot of money, because this isn't all that easy to find, this information. But I've gone through the process of finding it. I do have a business, and I'm hoping to just get back the money that I've put into learning all this. And then I probably am going to shut my business down because I don't terribly need the money. But this is here so that other people can use this without having to pay an arm and a leg, because there are a lot of people who could use this information. Now, if you have the possibility, one of the best ways to become permanently compliant is to have an activated special formation. Now, you're likely going to have to wait until the proper period of time arrives to do this. And this gets a lot more complicated, but you don't have to do, you don't have to say this, it has to be this or nothing. For example, in period 9, all houses have a possibility of being a 7-star robbery house. It's just, that can be quite hard. And I actually think period 1 is quite similar to period 9. Period 2 is different. It has a lot more possibilities of different special formations. But that's 40-some years down the road. If I'm still alive, that will be quite surprising because I'll be over 100 years old. So I'm not too worried about that, but other people are. Now, until the proper period arrives, if you really want to do this to create an activated special formation, you just use the methods that I've talked about here to create compliance in your house until you get there. And of course, this really applies to a house that you really love. If you don't really care so much about the house, it doesn't matter. You just move to another house that is good. You can do that too. So there's no fixed hard set rules here. There's a lot of flexibility here, but you do have to know what you're doing. So that's basically it. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please feel free to contact me here if you have any questions or visit my ad-free website. And if you subscribe, I will have some regular videos and also some monthly videos that will help you with that kind of thing. Thank you again for watching.